We now want to dive deeper into what it actually means to scale green tech these days. And we all know, I mean, at least those of you that have maybe following the scene a little bit, that it's been, let's say, tougher winds that have been coming towards us for all green tech startups. Now, for the first time in Q2 2025, investment has rebounded, has come back quite strongly, amounting to 2.5 billion. What's quite interesting about the landscape at the moment is that average deal size has doubled, but the overall volume in Europe has decreased to a 7-year low. So we see more bigger deals, but what does that mean, especially for the smaller startups that are looking to get funding in the green tech space these days? This is something that is quite interesting to look at. And what we now have, especially for you, of course, is 2 startups that are tremendously successful in what they do. One from Europe, both are from Europe, one's from Switzerland, one is from Germany, that want to talk about what does the current landscape mean for scaling green tech, and what other lessons can you share about building a successful green tech company these days. The panel is moderated by a very, very experienced VC, Danish-based. They've just launched their second fund, 150 million under their wings. So also someone who really knows a thing or two about climate tech. So please put your hands together for our host of this session. This is Andreas Winter-Extra of Kompas VC. Thank you so much, Andreas.
Hey. Hello, good morning. I was already introduced, but give me like 10 seconds to this. Andreas, we are a sustainability-focused VC investing in manufacturing, supply chain, and the built environment. I'm today joined by 2 fantastic people. I realize I haven't asked you how to pronounce your name, so this will be the first cringe moment of the day. Fajer? Okay, that was right. Please, from Oxyle, and Wolfgang from Enpal, and they will introduce themselves and their companies. You go first. You go first, no?
Thank you. Hello everyone, I'm Fajer. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Oxyle. We're a Swiss startup treating water and freeing it from toxic chemicals called PFAS, or forever chemicals, by destroying them and not filtering or absorbing them, like everyone else seems to be doing.
Hi again, my name is Wolfgang. I come from Enpal, with the company now for almost 5 years. We used to be a one-trick pony, so we're selling solar energy systems online. This is what we did 5 years ago when I joined the firm. Now we are a full energy company, not only selling solar energy systems and batteries and wall boxes for EV charging and heat pumps and smart meters, not only online but also offline, and also connecting them to a virtual power plant, so to balance out the ups and downs of renewables, because you all know it's dependent on sun and wind, but we charge the batteries when prices at the market are low, and we charge back into the grid, feed back into the grid when prices on the market are high, so we make much money for our customers. And also we do something good for the energy transition, because otherwise, if you don't have this flexibility in the grid, then you can't work with solar and wind. So we enable the energy transition in that way.
Fantastic. And with these 2 topics, we have actually sort of, I think, two major themes in sustainability. Number one, basically, well, we have microplastics, we have PFAS that are sort of the top of mind when it comes to pollution, when it comes to how actually we as humans will survive long term, hopefully, and then the entire energy transition in the built environment, where we also invest sort of like 40% of CO2 emissions come from actually the built environment, so adjacent to buildings, and it's often overlooked. But
also a big shout out to our investment in Ecoworks, also from Berlin, Emanuel Heisenberg, for a serial refurbishment of buildings. So this is something we should do more about.
Yes, we should do more about, but we also have challenges here. So we heard just now, sort of, it's a little bit recovering, but as a sustainability investor over the past year, I felt sort of that sustainability has fallen out of fashion, even though it's a really important topic. We had sort of a first wave of sustainability investments in solar actually in the early 2010s, which then sort of led to a lot of failures, which meant that a lot of investors left again. Now it seems to balance out a little bit, but nevertheless, how do you perceive the actual funding environment? Discussions with investors never stops. What are you hearing? What are sort of the challenges and what are sort of opportunities?
I mean, I represent the water industry in the cleantech space, and the data on that is quite sad, actually. Of all the cleantech funding that's out there, water gets 1%, which is less than 1% to be very precise. So that's quite a bad statistic, right? But in saying that, as a 5-year-old startup, we raised more than 20 million so far. And 2 rounds that we raised, they came to us and we closed a round within 1 month of meeting the VC. So I think there are 2 things to be said here. Yes, water is a human right. It should not be priced, but toxic water that we are seeing today needs to be treated by someone, the people who are polluting it. So I think if you make a really good, scalable, economical business model case, and you also show how that ties to some actual environmental impact that you can measure, there are people out there who see the big picture. It's a patient, impact-driven capital. It exists, so you need to talk to the right people. Don't talk to a VC who's into SaaS when you're building hardware for clean tech. Like, we need to do our homework. We need to talk to the right people because the capital is there and the problem is there. There are a lot of challenges on that too, but coming from a water space, raising 2 rounds without having to, I shouldn't play too much into the fact that, oh, there is not enough capital, because it has not been the case for me and Oxyle. And we did raise the largest seed round ever seen in water in January of this year. So there's a lot of good that's happening in the industry right now. But if your tech is not scalable, and if you as a founder cannot demonstrate how you scale in the next few years, how you bring the cost down and revenues up, then some of the responsibility also lies on us, and not just on hardware and clean tech being the bad person here. So I think it's a 2-way street.
Well, I was never. I was never a big fan of the word sustainability anyway. So I'm not too much bummed out that now the hype is a bit over. It will come back anyway. So I'm not too bummed out about this, because when it's a business case and you can make money with it, in a capitalistic system like we have. Investors and founders will do it anyways. So with renewable energy, it's cheap, it's scalable, and this is why people do it. I mean, even in Texas, right? So what is the one state in the US where solar and wind are just on the rise? It's Texas. It's not California. They too, but like the most conservative state, the most Republican state ever, where politicians are much against solar and wind per se, but still their bodies invest in solar and wind because it makes sense, it makes money. So this is why they do it. And the same with Enpal. When we started 8 years ago or so, our founder Mario Kohle put his own money into the company, and then the Zalando founders joined. Then Lukasz Gadowski. People here would know him, and then like Principal Capital from the Silicon Valley, and then HV Capital and SoftBank with 150 million alone. So this is like a step-to-step approach, and we always were looking for money when we didn't need it. So we had good negotiations about the term sheet, and this is I think a good strategy to always look out for money even if you don't need it.
That's an interesting thing. So I think Enpal. It's one of the great funding stories in Germany, and when we are talking about sort of the average deal size and where they're moving, this is actually skewed very heavily. And am I allowed to mention 1,5? So there's Enpal 1,5 that really attract really outsized rounds at the moment, because people see, there's money to be made. But you're sort of at a very interesting intersection here that actually sort of can generate these returns and even relatively quickly in an industry that otherwise is moving fairly slowly, because sort of like when you look at sort of installing a solar system and or installing a heat pump and everything else, the lead times are relatively long. It takes time to install. You need to get the financing sorted and so on. But also here, with water filter, you do not water filter, you destroy it. That is infrastructure. That is also really, really important, but also slow-ish in general. How do you talk to investors about this when you say, hey, we got the funding round closed very quickly, but did that ever come up, sort of?
Oh, absolutely. I think the only way to deal with that is being very brutally honest about the capital cost that it takes, but also have a really good explanation of how you can amortize those costs really quickly and how the business model scales. So you need to be very honest about what you know. Data that looks bad to you today is not necessarily bad if it generates revenue in a couple of years and you're profitable. So you just need to do your homework. You have to put the data and the facts on the table. And then it's doable, right? So yes, in our case as well, a typical reactor is that we install on a customer site. It costs money, it's capital intensive. But with a recurring revenue model, which is 50% and plus, positive in gross margin, you can show to an investor really quickly how this is actually a really smart business model. So it just depends on, if you're just measuring an economic impact, but also an ecological impact and how you can tie those two things together. But that comes up quite often.
So Enpal is also interesting for another reason, and that is that you have actually a more complex financing structure. You combine different things. You have equity investments. You get sort of loan guarantees from banks so that you can finance other things, and that adds quite a bit of flexibility. And number one, equity is always the most expensive form. So, and as sustainability investors, we have talked for a long time about sort of the need to have hybrids or sort of multiple different things financing a startup, because we cannot sort of finance the large outlays from our balance sheet, because as a VC we are a big VC, but we are still relatively small. So how do you see sort of like that evolving? What did you see sort of works, doesn't work in terms of how you structure your financing?
Yeah. So good point. There is the distinction to be made between like classic VC money, so that goes as an investment into the company, and then what we call SPVs, special purpose vehicles. So this is only on the customer side. So what we do, we offer the customer a financing model, saying, okay, you don't want to pay everything up front, you want to buy the heat pump, or you don't want to buy the solar energy system because it costs you 20,000 euros or more. So it's a big hurdle for your private investment. It's often like the solar system would be like the most expensive thing you would buy after your house, often. Maybe the third expensive after the car, depends on the car. But it's really expensive. Most people don't have that money. So usually they would go to the bank, right? And then your local Sparkasse would say, we don't make much money with that loan. We're not interested in giving you a loan for this. And then even if they do, lots of paperwork is combined with it. So it's a big hurdle for them to do the investment. So we wanted to take away that hurdle and say, okay, we offer you the loan with super flexible conditions, up to 25 years of repayment time. And you can pay upfront nothing or 5,000. You can also, of course, buy the system right away without the financing, so you save the interest. And this makes it really easy for customers because they don't have to go to the bank. They can finance it flexibly. And most people do like after half a year or a year when they see, okay, the thing works. Yeah, so you don't pay anything up front if you don't want to. Then the PV system is in the rooftop and it generates electricity, feeds into the grid, and you see, okay, they didn't destroy my roof. That's a good thing. So now I pay 5,000 euros. And then after a year, they pay another 5,000. And this is a good thing called special purpose vehicle. It's sometimes in English also called debt, although we are not an indebted company. A bit confusing. But that's how it works. It's now 5 billion worth, our refinancing schemes, and this is super customer obsessed how this works.
I think it's also easier for you because you're using sort of off-the-shelf components. So a solar system generally sort of like has been proven that a solar system works. A heat pump, if you get it from a manufacture and not doing your own. It's proven that it works. But for your reactor, for example, have you looked at venture debt when you say we actually do this as sort of as a service? So yeah.
I mean, just to add on to that too, right? So one is, venture debt or bank loans. But one thing that I thought was really useful for us in the early stages, before we ever raised the first round, we'd already raised 7 million, and that was all through grants and subsidies that you get with no strings attached, right? So if you're working in a really impactful segment like water treatment and removing pollutants, there is financing available from the EU and the Swiss government. So before we signed any term sheet, we were a team of like 5 people with 7 million in the bank. And that was a nice thing to have, which helped us really go out in the market, prove the tech, validate the risks, and then we could attract great capital without being it too expensive as a founder, right? But apart from that, as you said, there are different vehicles available as well. We can also play quite a lot with the business model as well for the customers, where if they don't want to, for example, pay for the entire upfront cost of a couple of $1 million installation, which is quite a lot for many customers, and there are multiple of them that they require, right? So a rental option is available, but then you can also get like debt from large banks that are available. If they see a contract on the table, they're happy to do that. But that's the case you need to sort of build. So there's different ways of playing with the business model to not over-dilute by raising around always, but use vehicles that are available. So the customer doesn't buy something, they pay rent with a really nice gross margin for you there. And someone else finance that at low terms because it's a clean tech segment, and you can show multiple contracts coming. And that's one thing we're exploring with a lot of success today. Instead of raising a large round again, we are just making the customers not pay for it up front, but find the capital with the decent enough interest, which is not as bad as the VC round that we'll have to raise still. So there are different options there.
Okay, so shifting gears a little bit here, we talked a lot about money, but if you want to scale, you also need people behind it. And it's depending on where you operate. It's sometimes very competitive to find the right people. We have actually 2 startups that are based in our portfolio that are based in Zurich, and also sustainability. One of them just lost 2 people because someone else paid more money. Unfortunately, luckily the others are all committed. But especially in early stages, when you start out, how do you sort of like when you can't pay enough, maybe, or not as much as others, how do you attract talent, and does sort of the story play a role for you?
Absolutely. I think you need to, as a founder, define what is your mission, what kind of culture do you have in the company, and that's the kind of people you need to attract. That lays the foundation for everything. So that's the first thing. I did a bit of soul searching as a founder. What kind of company do I want? What kind of people do I want to attract? Are they mission driven, or are they direct incentive driven as to what amount they can enter the bank every month as a salary check? So you need to define that for yourself and then attract those people. And obviously doing something as treating water for the future generation, that's a really important and bold mission to have, especially if you can show the impact of it every 10 minutes because the water is treated now. So it's not a long-term vision they have to imagine what the impact looks like. They can be part of creating that impact themselves in a lab on a customer side every minute. So it helps to put all those data into the story, into a very quantitative, impact-driven story. But apart from that, it's also important to let the team enjoy the success of the company. So every single person at Oxyle, we have 40 plus people today, they have option plan, so they all enjoy the success of the company. And that's very important to me as a founder, that it doesn't matter if it's a tech role or non-tech role, they all have incentives in the company, and we top them off. That's how we retain talent. And our team has already seen an option plan they got on the first day is worth X times today. So they've seen what that could mean. It's on paper still today, I know, but that's still something you can quantify, and they can be part of the story. So you have to get the right people who get a kick out of be part of this growth story of a startup that started at ETH Zurich with 2 people in the middle of COVID with masks on, right? That's how we started. And everyone said, do not do this. No one cares about wastewater. Wastewater is not sexy. But we're doing this today with 40 plus people and growing. So a lot of people like that, and they want to be part of that. So you have to attract those people.
Now, Enpal is a completely different beast. I don't know how many employees you have at the moment, but you also have sort of like skilled labor shortages that you have to deal with. You have competitors trying. How do you do this then on a much larger scale and with people who are more removed from sort of the core mission?
Yeah, I believe this is the difference between hardware companies like ours and software companies, right? Like Instagram, how many people did they employ when they were sold to Facebook or Meta? 40 or so for a billion worth company. So that's the difference between those only software companies and companies like ours that need many employees. Like for instance, like the blue collar workers we have on the construction sites. This is more than 1,000 only on the construction site. So we have in total several thousand employees. Most of them obviously on the construction sites. And that's the big difference. We are blue collar and white collar alike. We have the programmers and coders, many of them based in Munich, and we have all the installers, electricians, all over the place. So, and that's the very difference. I believe if you have a mission, you do something good, and you have good working conditions, so overall, like the wage you pay, then people come to your place. If you don't have a good mission and don't pay good wages, then they leave, or they don't even come.
Fantastic. Going maybe a little bit or switching gears now, thinking about when you actually started out. It was during COVID. You said with masks. Probably sort of the advice would not be sort of like start another one when a pandemic hit, but if someone starts out now and sees sort of like, okay, hey, I see the challenges that we face as humanity. I see sort of an opportunity to hopefully make money out of this one, but also do something good. But I also see the funding environment and also sort of the early stage being really hard. What would be sort of your advice for someone who thinks about starting? How should they get started?
I think it'll be the same advice I think I gave to myself and I got from my mentors a few years ago when I started Oxyle, which is you need to be really clear, first of all, what you're selling and to whom. So you should design a product with the customer in mind, and not just because you're a PhD, you're a scientist, and you come up with a great problem that you can solve that no one wants to buy, right? So it's always design a product for a customer in mind and make sure that they want that. So go talking to customers very early on, pilot, prototype. Even if it looks really bad and crappy, our first prototype looked really crappy. And we still keep that in the office so everyone can see that. That's where we started. It should look crappy. It looks pretty crappy. But it worked. It was the first validation we got from a large customer in Switzerland, and that was just a skyrocket for us to get all these grants and raise money, right? So make sure you design a product for a customer and talk to them and get their feedback. And once you get that right, because tech alone is not going to do it. You need to make sure you attract the right patient impact-driven capital and start working with those lighthouse customers. They might not be amazing, they might have a really small problem, but they will test you, they will vouch for you, and they will give you a reference case. And you can't put a number on that. So if you just focus on get the tech as close as possible to what the customer wants and get those couple of 3, 4 really interested customers who really believe in you and they will talk about you. Even if the revenue is small with them, just go work and get their references. The rest will come. So I think that's just something I'll do again when I do a new one.
Yeah, that's true. Like your prototype must look crappy, otherwise it's not prototype anymore. And you don't know what the customers want, and you don't know, if it works or not. So always do the prototype very, very shitty. I was working for the German Armed Forces before I joined Enpal, and there we have like the gold-plated solution, the Goldrandlösung, and this is why everything in weapon is so expensive, because what the armed forces do, they say, okay, I need this, I need this, I need this, and then the times are extending, and the costs go up and up and up and never go down. And then after 10 years of deadlines being missed, you get something for too much money that you don't need anymore. So this is why you should do prototypes and get things done fast, and not do the gold-plated solutions.
And maybe don't have product market fit. So I mean, you can design the sort of perfect solution and then realize that nobody wants to buy it.
It's like the car in Homer Simpson, It's like, oh, I want this and that, and then no one buys it.
So last question, and then I think we can switch it over and ask a question from the audience. there's one other big actor in this, and this is the government with regulations. And we have seen sort of, especially in the US, we have seen sort of regulations slipping now, but also the EU, sort of there's constant discussions about sort of extending internal combustion engine lifetimes and so on. How much does regulation play sort of a role in your planning? How much is it a driver? How much is it a, sort of something that is blocking you from doing things? And what would be your wish? Maybe start with you, Wolfgang.
The other way around, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I keep saying the energy market is not really a market. It's a planned economy with a few market elements. For instance, if you want to sell electricity off our solar panels on the market and not just feed it into the grid just when the sun shines and get the subsidy from the government, then we need a market location identification number. Otherwise, we are not allowed to feed that in when we want, but just when, just sell it on the market when the sun shines. And this is not what we want to do, actually. So how much time do we need to get this market ID? Up to a year, because we have 900 different grid operators. Yeah, just one example. Or smart meter rollout. Like all the countries around Germany, they all have like rollout rates of 100%, and we are at Germany at 3%. So 3 versus 100%. We are lagging behind much. Why? Because smart meter rollout was more regulated in Germany than a nuclear waste transport. It at least felt like it. So there was so much regulation about it that no one did it. And now we started 2 years ago, and now we are the biggest smart meter operator in Germany, because now it's allowed to do it. So just give companies, give the market a bit more leeway, and things will magically happen. It goes up and down, and what the Ampel-Regierung, like the former government in Germany, did, they changed regulation overnight, and then markets crashed, and then there's a new regulation or there's a new subsidy. So again, it's like a stop and go. And this is what we don't need. We want to plan ahead. We need to invest. And this constant stop and go must go away. And I hope that the new government learns from the lessons from the former failed government, not to do new subsidies and then take them away overnight, then add another subsidy, then take it away overnight. So do some planning and some reliability on the market, so that customers, manufacturers, installers, that the market can function.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. And I wish we had some of those subsidies, some directions or incentives in the water market, which don't exist today, actually. It's a very regulatory-driven market. There is no customer today who is spoken to, who just wakes up and says, let's clean water better than we need to. That's not a thing. It costs, so why would they pay for that? So it is really regulatory-driven. And unfortunately, what we see is a very fragmented regulatory-driven environment where there is no EU water framework directive that unifies entire Europe in one framework for PFAS regulations, for example. So every country does their own thing. So when you talk to a customer, you have to make sure that you can meet their discharge limits that really vary. So you asked for a question, what's your wishful thinking? My wishful thinking would be we have a very unified, universal code of law, what can be discharged into the water, because we know what is safe for humans. We know what's safe for fish, our soil, our air. We know those. That data is not like a surprise. We know the values for that. And it would be great to know how we can now implement solutions that we also know exist, and work. So it's all about having this willingness from the regulators, from the public, from the customers to do something about it. Because solutions exist, data on them, these chemicals being bad exist. It's just a willingness to adapt and just get it done and not roll things back like the US did this year, unfortunately.
Fantastic. I think we have time for one question, if anyone has one. No? Okay, then we give the organizers 2 minutes back. We are running late anyway, so thank you very much for the fantastic discussion.
To our panelists, scaling green tech solution. As we all know, there is no planet B. So thank you so much for sharing your insights from the Swiss and the German startup green tech ecosystem.